you very much, Ciaran Corla. Minister, I welcome the move of the government from a developer-led to a plan-led approach. I think that was a very positive move to make. My preference would be that we would have a lot more state involvement in these projects, but I do think that it was a positive step to see this happen. I will say a few things in relation to that, though, similar to my colleagues. We need to make sure that the planning process is well resourced, that the correct expertise and enough expertise is there to enable for the not just the efficient but a thorough examination of these projects. And when I talk about expertise, it's not just engineers, Minister, it's also ecologists and specialisations such as that. Because what I do want to talk about today, because it is Biodiversity Week, and I don't like talking about climate action without talking about biodiversity because they are so intertwined, is the biodiversity aspects of this. And when we're looking at wind farms, similar to wind farms on land, we need to make sure that our wind farms are in the right places. They're a very important piece of infrastructure, but they need to be in the right places, which is why I do prefer the plan-led approach. But I would, I suppose, offer caution the fact that we don't have our MPAs in place yet. And I think that those two processes need to be in parallel. We can't have one process travelling ahead of the other, because I think that it will bring with it inherent risks. So I would ask for a speedy resumption of or finalisation of the MPAs to protect biodiversity, but also to provide the clarity that wind farms will need, and to make sure that any projects that do get approval are robust and that they don't end up in the courts for years on end. I also think it's really important that we're not just looking at, and the plan-led approach should lead to this, but we're not looking at farms in isolation, but it's the cumulative impact of these farms as well that we're looking at in relation to environmental considerations and biodiversity. But I want to use my time here today to talk about the opportunities, because I think by having this infrastructure in place, not only should we be seeking that the developers mitigate any potential biodiversity impacts of these structures, but actually we should be looking for an enhancement of biodiversity from these structures. And I think the whole concept of net gain needs to be incorporated into your consideration of this. And I suppose I am concerned when I looked at the policy statement itself, out of 29 or 30 pages, only 2 pages mentioned the word biodiversity, and I think the word was only used 3 times in the whole document. So, you know, I would like a rebalancing of that focus. But I think there are many things that developers, not only are they interested in doing, but I think the government needs to lead and needs to direct them in doing it. And so when they are developing and putting the infrastructure in, there has to be a requirement that the infrastructure is nature sensitive. That it just has to be a fundamental, that if they're putting infrastructure in, into our marine, it needs to be designed with a positive biodiversity impact arising from it. And I think that needs to be one of the considerations, that they have to show demonstrable efforts to design and build wind farms in a way that not only isn't just mitigates, but actively enhances the ecosystem. And I will just use the last minute to talk about a project in Wicklow that I have been aware of and have actually, met on number of times, and that is the Nori project. So off Wicklow, as you will be aware, Minister, we had huge native oyster beds there that were just so positive from a biodiversity perspective, but also an economic perspective. Unfortunately, we did what humans tend to do, and we overfished them, and they're now wiped out. But there are opportunities to actually restore those native oyster beds. There is a person, Stephen Kavanagh in Arklow, who is really keen. He's worked for many years now trying to get this project off the ground. He's been in contact with the wind farms, and he's hopeful that they will partner and get involved in this project. But I think it's a really, really positive thing that could be done. And I would really like the government to take more of an active role and relationship with this, and to try push this project forward. Other countries are doing these projects all the time. So I don't think there's any need for us to reinvent the wheel here. I think we need to look overseas, see where it's worked, learn from their lessons and their mistakes, and actually incorporate it into the developments here. So that not only do we get a really positive climate action and emissions result from, we also get a very positive biodiversity result as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Whitmore. Deputy Boyd Barrett.